Welcome.
You are watching Line Screw 1. On this episode, we travel from Canada's far north in the Yukon over the coastal mountains into Alaska, and we stop and discover interesting things along the way. So join me as we explore these amazing lands. Well, good morning, tubers, from the mighty Yukon. In my apartment here, I have a beautiful, fully functional apartment with everything, including a dishwasher. I don't even know what to do with all the space. But today, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about traveling to Alaska. Yeah, we're going to do a road trip to Alaska from the Yukon. Well, we're already up here in the Great White North, in the far north of 60 degrees latitude. So let's do a run to Skagway. But we're going to stop along the way and show you all the sites, because I did grow up here, so I know the area very well. And a few tips. For those of you taking cruises up into Skagway, I'm doing the reverse of what you could do. So if you are interested in renting a car in Skagway and heading in, a lot of people don't make it all the way into Whitehorse, even though that's kind of a shame. It all depends on how much time you have in port. But if you're doing a road trip in the Yukon, got to have a few things. For example, beauty of growing up in the Yukon, I remember, you're driving and the distances are vast, and it's not like there's a McDonald's to stop at. Often, you go, hey, Dad, I gotta go use the bathroom. Well, in the Yukon, you just pull over and go into the forest. So you bring some of this along. Yes. So conveniently, the bears do it in the bush, and so will you, because bathrooms are few and far between. Since we're headed to Alaska, I got some Yankee Doodle dollars so I can buy myself lunch. And because the distances are vast, and what happens if you break down or whatnot, you need some Scooby snacks. That's Canadian-made crispers, and something to drink. Not in terms of alcohol, but in terms of beverages, non-alcoholic. I think I've got some iced tea in the fridge. Yes, I do. Iced tea in the fridge. It's going in the bag. And I'll bring along an extra sweatshirt, because you never know if you break down and it gets cold at night. You got to be warm, right? Speaking of cold at night, the weather's been fantastic. And we're talking, this is like late April. So the weather's been fantastic, and it's really just, mid-spring, honestly. At night, it's freezing. It's below 0 Celsius. So it's below 32 for you Yankee Doodle dandies out there who don't know the metric system. But by the time afternoon kicks in, it's nice and warm. You're kissing 50 degrees Fahrenheit. But I am going through the mountains, and you always got to be prepared in case you have a breakdown and it does get cold. So anyway, let's get out of here and hit the road. Okay, good morning from downtown Whitehorse, the capital of the Yukon. Right in front of you, that's the Yukon River, where the territory is named after. Okay, let's turn down onto Main Street, get on to 2nd, loop over to Robert Service Way, get on the Alaska Highway, or as you Americans call it, the Alcan Highway. Don't know why you call it that. It's actually called the Alaska Highway in Canada. But anyway, we're going to get on the Alaska Highway, and then we're going to head to the junction and head down the Klondike Highway and go to Skagway, Alaska. Now it's Sunday morning. That's why the downtown looks so dead. But it's going to clear up. It's going to be partly sunny. It's just above 0. Time is at 5 minutes to 9. So still a beautiful day. Okay, let's show you the sights along the way. We'll be stopping and getting out, and I'll be doing a little bit of narration, so it's not just me yapping while we're driving all the time. So, right in front of you is the historic SS Klondike paddle wheeler. Looks like they're doing some work on the site. Yeah, it's a beautiful little piece of history. The SS Klondike, that white ship. I'll actually have to do a video from there. It was actually wood powered, and it would be used for hauling freight up until the 50s up to Dawson City. So anyway, let's get going and get up on the highway. And I think our first stop is going to be Miles Canyon, which is just outside of the city. And we're gonna walk across the Miles Canyon suspension bridge. So let's get her done. Well, we are on the Alaska Highway, but unfortunately the road, which is seasonal, to Miles Canyon is still closed. Opens up in sometime in May, looks like. They were actually running a street sweeper, getting the gravel off the road and getting the road ready for people to use it. And I tried getting in, and the guy with the street sweeper kept, you know, motioning like, don't go in there, so I turned around. So, like I said, we're still on the Alaska Highway, and we're heading to the Klondike Highway turnoff, and we will be heading out towards Skagway, Alaska. But a little preview, we're going to be stopping at Emerald Lake. It's probably going to be a nothing burger because the lake is still going to be somewhat frozen over, but it's a very beautiful lake in the summer, and because of the greenish blue tinge to the bottom of the lake, which you can't really see that effect during the winter. And then we're going to stop at the world's smallest desert, Carcross Desert, and head through Carcross and then through into British Columbia and into Alaska. So we will be leaving the Yukon. Okay, we're on the South Klondike Highway now, and take a look ahead. Look at those majestic snow-capped mountains. This is a perfect time of year to be going through the mountain passes. You can see some beautiful snow-capped scenery. And best of all, the road should be clear the whole way. I don't anticipate any snow on the road at all. Well, this is one of the most photographed lakes in Canada. Definitely the most photographed in the Yukon. It's called Emerald Lake. And you can kind of sort of get an idea of why it's so photographed, but once the ice is completely melted, it has this bluish green emerald look, and it's because of the material that's deposited on the bottom of the lake bed and how the light reflects back. But it is famous for that. You've probably seen pictures of Emerald Lake. Anyway, it's a nothing burger, as I predicted, because I've seen Emerald Lake with ice on it. Of course, in the dead of winter, it looks even worse because it's completely frozen. At least it's now nearly melted. You couldn't walk on that ice now. You'd fall through. Just a few more miles down the road, the world's smallest desert, Carcross Desert. And we're heading there now as we're heading down the Klondike Highway to Alaska. So here we are at the Carcross Desert. They call it the world's smallest desert, but it's really not a desert. It kind of has that feel of it. There is some trees and a little bit of shrubbery that can exist in this soil, but if you look behind me, it's how it has that deserty look. Probably cool for some film shoots. People do a lot of recreating with their ATVs here, but it's quite a few acres. It's actually an ancient lake bed, and all this sand was brought here by glaciers. And if you look around at a lot of the mountains, you can see that the tops of the mountains, like look behind me, tops of the mountains and the sides, the edges are smoothed off because of erosion, partially due over time when the glaciers were here. But this is essentially an ancient lake bed, and once the lake disappeared, all the silt that was brought here from the glaciers was left, and that's what we got. I mean, we're still north of the 60th degree latitude, so this isn't a desert, but locally they have fun calling it that. And I remember as a kid being here, I found some seashells. Now the elevation here is probably, I'm guessing, around 2,000 feet above sea level. And I actually found some seashells buried in this. So obviously some, artifacts like that can be trapped in the glaciers along with the sand. But I knew that we were still quite a ways from the ocean at a really high elevation, so I knew that these seashells were not from here. It was kind of one of those aha moments as a kid where you don't know a lot about human history, plate tectonics, geology, or how to even classify the species of the shells, but you realize, hey, if you got seashells and you're not near the ocean and you're a couple thousand feet above sea level, it obviously had to get here, and it wasn't brought here by man. It was just part of a natural process. So yeah, it's a beautiful day to be here. It's 5 degrees Celsius, so not too cold. At least it's not freezing. It's going to warm up quite nice. So let's head through Carcross, and we'll be leaving the Yukon, heading to British Columbia briefly, and then into Alaska. So let's keep heading south. So here we are in Carcross at the Tutsi Memorial. This was one of the great steamships that would ply the lakes and rivers here in the Yukon. And of course some local had to get drunk and burn it down, and the crime is still unsolved. That's why when I mentioned that steamship, the SS Klondike, it's one of the last ones left that's been restored. And of course preservation efforts are continually underway to make sure it doesn't burn to the ground. And in fact, I was living in Whitehorse when on the dockyard, 2 of the steamers were burnt and vagrants were living inside of it. Absolute shame, but that's all that's left of the Tutsi, and that's how people got around. They were wood-fired boilers, and men were paid at different cash points along the routes they traveled to have cords of wood ready to be loaded onto the deck, and that's how they powered them, because coal wasn't abundant, and the cost to ship coal up here just to run it when you've got forests and all you got to do is chop the trees down, and you can use that to power the steamships. Of course, now we have roads, but part of the history of moving things around is the trains, and we're going to talk a little bit about the White Pass and Yukon route, because the track is still maintained to here. It used to be maintained right to Whitehorse, but once this southern Klondike Highway was completed, it wasn't needed. So it's a narrow gauge track, and one of the great railway adventures where people still take the cruises and end up in Skagway, and they take the White Pass and Yukon route, and it follows the White Pass. And it's quite a scenic adventure, and I'll show you how the narrow gauge track looks like. It's obviously, you don't need to know a lot about trains to know that is a narrow gauge. It's nothing like you'd normally see. So we are in what you would call downtown Carcross. Not much here. It is a very small village. I think about 400 or 500 people live here. But these buildings have been here for a long time. The general store and the Caribou Hotel. Now, my favorite thing that I loved about the Caribou Hotel, stopping here as a kid in the 70s, there was a parrot that lived here at the hotel, and it would swear. The local people and miners obviously taught it to curse. And one time, there was a few times where we stopped by and the parrot wouldn't make any noises. But one time, it was like late in the day, they were closing. We stopped by and, we say, hey, we just want to go see the parrot. And this parrot just starts swearing. And I thought that was just the coolest thing. Yeah. Caribou Hotel. God, how long has it been here? 100 years? More than 100 years? I do know that I think there was even a murder here just in the last 25 years. Somebody that was working on the hotel. See, that's the thing about the winters. The winters are long here, and there's a lot of firearms and liquor. And sometimes when you are stuck inside, because it's minus 35 outside, personal tensions can build and be released inappropriately through acts of violence, which are very unfortunate. But yeah, fond memories of being here in Carcross. And of course, I was never able to make it to Skagway as a kid because you'd have to take the train, and we never took the train there, and there was no highway. Of course, I've been to Skagway many times, typically on cruise ships, but I have driven there before. I guess this is probably the last time I'm ever going to make that trip via road. So, speaking of which, that is where the Carcross train station was to drop off and pick up passengers. Okay, let's get into my Camry and head out of the Yukon into British Columbia and down into Alaska. And of course, we're going to be stopping along the way. Welcome to the Yukon, and that means we are on the 60th latitude north. This is the border between the Yukon and British Columbia. So we will be continuing down the Klondike Highway through a brief little strip of British Columbia and then heading into Alaska. And it's wonderful even in the mountain passes here. There's no snow on the ground. I remember when this sign looked a little different. They've changed it. Guess it's got to survive the cold winters. Anyway, what a wonderful day to be traversing the Klondike Highway. And it's a little before the tourist season, so not too many people on the road, making the drive even more enjoyable. About to pass the Canada Customs Border Inspection Station, and the weird thing about the South Klondike Highway is that the Canadian Border Inspection building and the US one are about 15 miles apart, and that's because of logistics with staffing and the weather in the mountain pass. So it essentially means you can enter the other country, meaning you can enter Alaska from Canada or Canada from Alaska without actually being processed through the border if you turn around before you get to that checkpoint and just double back. Of course, you'll have to go back through your own respective border check, but yeah, so it's a weird idiosyncrasy of the border around here, which just makes sense. And of course, there are some border crossings between Canada and Alaska where they even share the same building, which even makes sense. They just build it in such a way where the halfway point is where the border is, and each government keeps their respective offices on the opposite side of the building. That way they can share the construction costs. Makes a bit of sense. We are approaching the Canada Customs Border Station here at Bennett, British Columbia. And this skidoo guy, I guess he's decided he's going to go skidooing here.
Now we are heading south, so you don't have to stop here. Of course, when you're heading back into Canada, you must stop. Oh, pardon me, it's not Bennett, it's Fraser. This is the official crossing at Fraser. You can tell we're at a lot higher of an altitude. See, Skagway 36 kilometers and US border 12 kilometers. So yeah, there's a stretch of 12 kilometers. I thought it was about 15 miles. I was just guessing from previous times, but yeah, 12 kilometers between border posts. So, oh, I'm entering in a different time zone. So yeah, it's right, Alaska time. Keep that in mind. Your clock will change 1 hour back or 1 hour forward. But yeah, you can definitely tell you're at higher elevation here. Trees are more spindlier because they grow very, very slow. Very short growing season. And we got a lot more snow. But beautiful day. I mean, driving conditions are excellent. There's no snow on the road. It's kind of what I anticipated. Now this is supposed to be the Welcome to Alaska sign, and for some reason they took it down. It's not there. But we're in Alaska. So the US Customs is 8 miles from here, and the reason I know that is I just saw the sign. So this is actually the summit, the highest point. It's quite snowy up here. What's the temperature? Oh, 2 degrees Celsius, so it's above zero. But yeah. We're in America again, folks. Okay, we are approaching the US Customs and Border inspection here on the approach to Skagway down on the South Klondike Highway. So I better slow her down and turn the camera off. They hate being videotaped, so there we go. U.S. Port of Entry. Well, that was the friendliest U.S. Customs border guard I've ever met. He just basically didn't even ask me questions. He said, "Oh yeah, it's a great day, isn't it?" And I go, "Yeah, it's a great day." I mean, he didn't have to ask, like, "Well, what are you going to do?" Well, because I'm going to Skagway. Where else am I going to go? I guess I could get on a float plane or the Alaska Marine Ferry and go anywhere, but I didn't look like that kind of guy. Plus, I guess he knew I had, he thought I was a Yukoner. He goes, "Hey, you got your boat in yet?" And I go, "No, I'm not a local." Not a local, I don't got my boat in yet. Everybody transitions from snowmobiles to boats for recreation. So, anyway. So we only got about 4 miles and we'll be in Skagway, and we'll park this car and we will walk around. So this is the famous Broadway, the main strip here in Skagway. And all these people walking around are from the cruise ship. Well, we made it. We are in historic Skagway. I'm just on Broadway. Take a little walk looking for a place to get lunch. Now it's a little chilly, it's only about 8 degrees Celsius, but it's not raining and it's not snowing. So for being on the coast of Alaska here on the Panhandle, can't really complain. It's good to be back. When's the last time I was here? Oh, 2 years ago on a cruise ship. And it actually is a cruise port day. That's why there's actually people milling around, because tourists outnumber locals. Especially when there's like 3 ships here. I think there's only 1 ship in port today. So, I'm probably the only tourist in town that drove here. So, everybody else arrived on the ship. Oh. People getting pictures. So, where should I go for lunch? Lots of options. I was thinking the social house right over there. I'm gonna put that on the definite maybe list. Lots of trinket shops. In fact, the irony is you can buy a t-shirt that says Alaska, but it was made in Honduras, and you're buying it in Skagway. Yeah, lots of jewelry. Some trinkets. Now there was a place I remember going to in the 90s here. I drove here from Whitehorse once. I think it was around 98. And there was a place called the Sweet Tooth Cafe. I've actually been there a few times. It was really good food. Oh, you're hearing the famous White Pass and Yukon route train. Obviously they've got a load of tourists taking them up the pass. There's not much traffic here. Nobody's in a rush. There's only, what, maybe 8 miles of roads here in Skagway. The Sweet Tooth Cafe is no longer a cafe, it's a jewelry store, so bummer. But I remember eating there. Great food back in the 90s. So I went and spoke to a local and said, hey, you're a local, where do you go to eat in Skagway? There you go, Skagway Brewing Company. So that's where we're going to have lunch. So I'm now at the end of the road. I'm at the ocean. This is the end of the fjord here, and this is where Skagway meets the ocean. And it looks like we have only one ship in port today. It's the Norwegian Joy, I believe. So how did you enjoy your trip out of the Yukon and all the way to Alaska with all the little stops in between? You put your comments down below. And like I said, if you are on one of these cruise ships, you can do the absolute reverse trip, because the real Yukon and real Alaska is inland. It's not always at the port. In fact, I just had a lovely lunch at the Skagway Brewing Company. Lovely people there, lovely food. Nothing to complain about, but it's a wee pricey, if you know what I'm saying. So get out there, get her done, and enjoy the world. So in the meantime, folks, stay safe, keep your wheels on the ground. Talk to you soon. Over and out.
I got you.